Okay, so welcome to the First Continental Congress. So we have studied the acts and the events that are leading up to the Revolution, and we're almost there. In 1774, after the Intolerable Acts, when Boston was under military rule, under the Intolerable Acts, and the port of at Boston was closed, and they were called the Intolerable Acts, if you recall, because the British had put so many restrictions on the colonists. So they couldn't come in or out of the port, and they were under military rule. They had curfews. They had more taxes upon them. So in 1774, the Continental Congress met, and they decided, of course, there were no meetings, public meetings allowed in Massachusetts at that time because that was part of the Intolerable Acts. So instead of meeting in Boston, they met in Philadelphia, and a lot of famous figures who you might recognize were there. That group, when they met in Philadelphia, it was all the colonies except for Georgia. Georgia did not send representatives, they all voted to ban all the trade with England until the Intolerable Acts were taken away, until they were repealed. So they also called on each colony to begin training troops. So, but they had talked about declaring independence, and not all the colonies could agree about declaring independence from Great Britain. So they were still in talks about that. But they did vote to ban all trade with England until Parliament took away, repealed the Intolerable Acts, and they said, we need to start training some troops. We don't know what's going to happen. So they also sent a list of complaints, of grievances to King George. Now, what happened next? Well, the colonists hoped that the trade boycott, refusing to trade with England, would make England get rid of the Intolerable Acts. But Parliament, they stood strong. They said, we're not going to repeal them. We're not going to get rid of them like they did the Sugar Act, the Stamp Act, and so the Townshend Acts after the colonists got so mad. They stood their ground. They even put more restrictions on the colonists and had more troops sent from England. So John Hancock, yes, the one who signed the Declaration of Independence as well, he called out the militia. The militia are armed civilians who are trained to fight. So he called out the militia and said, you guys need to get ready. Okay. And then Paul Revere and the Midnight Ride came next. So what really is the Midnight Ride? I'm sure most of you have heard of Paul Revere and the Midnight Ride. Well, in Paul Revere's Midnight Ride, there were spies on both sides. General Gage, who was on the British side, a British general, he learned that the Massachusetts militia were storing arms, weapons, in Concord, Massachusetts, and that Sam Adams and John Hancock, leaders and members of the Continental Congress, were in Lexington. So on April 18, 1775, General Gage ordered Adams and Hancock arrested, and he told them, the British troops, to destroy the weapons. Well, the Sons of Liberty were prepared. Okay, there were spies on both sides. The Sons of Liberty heard about Gage ordering the British troops to arrest Hancock and Adams and destroy all their arms. So the Sons of Liberty spies told them about it, and Paul Revere and some other gentlemen came up with a plan. So Paul Revere went by sea, and a man named William Dawes, who was a blacksmith, he went by land. They were almost stopped by the British troops, or actually they were stopped by the British troops. A man named Mr. Prescott, he joined them, and Mr. Prescott broke away and rode to Concord and warned them. I'm going to show you a little bit of a visual on that. Visual, if Mrs. Vogt can get there. Okay, a visual in the book shows Revere's route in purple, Dawes' route in green. So you can see Dawes went by land, Revere went by sea and then rode. Okay, And then you can see where Prescott joins Dawes and Revere. Yellow route. Revere was captured. Dawes escaped and turned back. And Prescott moved forward and warned the people at Concord. That's the beginning of the Revolution. In class tomorrow, we're going to talk about what happened at Concord, what happened at Lexington, and why is it called the shot that was heard around the world. You can go back to these notes, rewind, and listen a little more slowly so you can get the information down in your paper if you haven't already. And have a good evening.